there right now. We want to see how far this story is reaching. The smoke from the backyard fire drifted through the open window and into the small kitchen where Adiz stood, barefoot on the cold floor, her hands deep in soapy water. She scrubbed the same pot she had cleaned twice already, but her stepmother's voice rang again from outside. That pot better shine, Adiz. If I see one stain in, you'll sleep without food. Adiz didn't reply. She had learned that silence was safer. Talking back, even to explain, always made things worse. Her fingers were wrinkled and raw. The water had long turned cold, and her stomach had been empty since morning. From the corner of her eye, she watched Nena walk in. Nena was her stepmother's daughter, just 1 year older, but the difference between them was like day and night. Nena wore a new wrapper, her hair freshly braided, her feet clean. She didn't even glance at Adiz as she walked past and opened the fridge to take out a chilled malt drink. "You're still scrubbing," Nena said, her voice dripping with mockery. "Did they pour engine oil inside the pot?" Adiz didn't answer. She bent her head lower, let her braids fall over her face, and kept scrubbing. "Anyway, Mama said you should finish the washing, sweep the whole compound, clean the pit latrine, and cook yam before she comes back. You better hurry. It's already getting late." She left, leaving the fridge open, the condensation dripping to the tiled floor. Adiz took a shaky breath. Her arms were aching, and her eyes burned, not just from the soap but from everything. Sometimes she wondered if her father could see her from wherever he was. Would he be proud of the way she endured, or would he want her to fight back? The gate creaked. Her heart jumped. She rushed to rinse the pot and wipe her hands on the edge of her wrapper. Her stepmother, Ezin, walked in holding a nylon bag of vegetables. Her eyes scanned the room like a hawk. "Why is there water on the floor?" she barked. "So you want me to fall and break my back?" "I'm sorry, Ma," Adiz said quickly. "Nena, keep quiet," Ezin snapped. "You think you can blame my daughter? Idiot. Your mother must have cursed the day she gave birth to you." The words landed heavy in Adiz's chest, but she didn't cry. Crying only gave them more to mock. "You think I don't know what you're doing?" Ezin continued. "You want to turn my home upside down. But as long as I'm alive, you will know your place." She dropped the bag on the table. "Cut the vegetables. Fast. If I come back and you're still standing here, I'll skin you alive." She turned and left, slamming the door behind her. Adiz stood still for a moment, her eyes on the bag. The world felt heavy. Not just the work or the insults, but the weight of being unwanted, of waking up every day in a house that never smiled at her. Her only comfort came at night. When the house was quiet, and the moonlight slipped through the window, she would lie on her mat and whisper to herself. Sometimes she imagined her real mother standing over her, brushing her hair and humming softly. Other times, she dreamed of leaving, of running far away to a place where no one knew her, where she could be anything she wanted. But morning always came too fast, and the dreams faded like smoke. That night, after all the work was done, Adiz sat at the back of the house with a bowl of water, washing her feet. Nena had eaten the food meant for both of them, and no one said a word. She sat there, quiet, the air filled with the sound of crickets and the soft croaking of frogs. Then, from the corner of the fence, she heard a low voice. "PSSST Adiz." She looked up quickly. "Ifini," she whispered, squinting into the dark. The boy stepped out from behind the plantain tree near the fence. He was a neighbor's son, a few years older, always kind, always smiling. "I saw what happened this afternoon," he said. "You didn't eat today, did you?" She opened her mouth to lie, but the truth came out first. "No." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a meat pie wrapped in newspaper. "Take. I bought it for you." Her hands trembled as she took it. The warmth of it felt unreal. No one had done something kind for her in so long, it almost hurt to accept it. "Thank you," she said softly. He nodded. "You deserve better than this, Adiz. One day, everything will change." As he disappeared back into the dark, Adiz sat there with the meat pie in her hand, unsure whether to eat it or cry. But deep inside, something stirred. Not just hunger, but a tiny flame she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The next morning came with the sound of a loud slap. Adiz had barely opened her eyes when her stepmother's palm met her cheek with the weight of a full-grown woman's rage. Her ears rang. "You stupid girl. Are you deaf now? Didn't you hear me calling you since?" Adiz scrambled up from her mat, her heart thumping. The slap still burned on her face. Her wrapper had loosened in her sleep, and she clutched it quickly around herself. "I'm sorry, Ma." "Don't tell me sorry," Ezin shouted, her eyes red with fury. "Lazy girl. You want to start sleeping like a goat, eh? This is not your mother's house." It wasn't. She never forgot that. Not even for a second. "Go and fetch water now. Before I come out and find that drum still empty." Adiz grabbed the aluminum bowl and ran out, barefoot. The morning was still dim, the sky heavy with mist, but other children were already on the road with their buckets. She walked fast, her feet brushing against stones and rough ground. The public tap was almost 2 compounds away, and the line had already started to form. By the time she filled the bowl and balanced it on her head, her neck was aching and her arms sore. But she didn't stop. She had only just started the day. As she returned, the noise from inside the house told her Ezin had started shouting again, this time at Nena, but it didn't sound like real anger. It sounded like the kind of shouting mothers used when they were pretending to scold but secretly smiling. "Why didn't you put enough salt inside the stew? Don't you know your uncle will be visiting?" "I'm sorry, Mama. I thought it was okay. Next time, taste it well. Do you want him to say I don't feed you well?" "My fine daughter." Adiz stood at the back door, waiting silently with the water bowl still on her head. No one told her to come in. No one even looked at her. She walked in slowly, lowered the bowl, and wiped her face. Her stomach growled, but there was no time for food. There never was. Today, she had to clean the veranda, wash Nena's clothes, go to the market with Ezin, and still help prepare for the uncle's visit. And that Uncle Obinna was one Adiz always dreaded. Obinna had eyes that wandered too much. Last time he visited, he stared at her like she wasn't even human, like she was something else. A thing. He laughed too loudly, and his jokes always had something disgusting hidden in them. Ezin never noticed. Or maybe she didn't care. By midday, the sun was hot enough to fry Gary on the concrete, and Adiz had been on her feet all morning. She was hand-washing the clothes behind the house, her knees pressing into the damp earth, when Nena walked up to her again. "Better hurry, Adiz," she said, sipping Zobo from a cold bottle. "Mama said Uncle Obinna will be here by 3. You still haven't mopped the sitting room. Should I tell her?" Adiz kept her mouth shut and her hands busy. Talking never helped. "You know, sometimes I think you're cursed," Nena said with a smirk. "The way everything always goes wrong around you. Even your mother died early. Maybe that's why Mama hates you." Adiz froze for a second, her eyes blinking rapidly to hold back the tears. That wound, losing her mother, was too deep, and Nena always knew where to press. She didn't reply. She just kept washing, harder now, scrubbing like the stains were everything she wanted to forget. By late afternoon, the house was spotless. Ezin had changed into her best blouse, her hair tied up with a shiny red scarf. She was all smiles now, laughing as she adjusted the cushions and sprayed perfume in the air. Adiz stood quietly in the corner, near the curtain. She was wearing an old gown that had faded to a dull grey, her feet dusty, her face drawn. But she didn't ask to change. She knew better. When Obinna arrived, his booming voice filled the house. "Ezin, my sister, where is my fine daughter?" Nena ran out smiling, arms wide. "Uncle, you're getting more beautiful each time I see you. Look at you." He hugged her tight and handed her a nylon bag full of biscuits, sweets, and a bottle of Coke. Adiz turned slightly away, hoping to disappear into the wall. Obinna's eyes found her. "And that one," he said, squinting. Still here. Esin waved her hand. Leave that one. She's just a house rat. Always hiding in corners. Lazy girl. Adiz stood still, her eyes low. Obinna laughed. You need to beat the laziness out of her. Or better still, marry her off to one of those old men in the village. She might be useful as a second wife. Esin laughed loudly. God forbid. I don't want any shame to follow my name. They talked like she wasn't even there. That night, the house was quiet again. Nena was asleep in her room. Esin had gone out to see a friend. Obinna had left with a bag of jollof rice and Nena's phone number. Adiz lay on her mat, staring at the cracked ceiling. She felt like she was shrinking. Each day, smaller and smaller. She wanted to scream, to run, to vanish. But she had nowhere to go. No one to run to. Her mother's family lived far away and had stopped calling after her father died. And Esin made sure no one even remembered her birthday, let alone her name. As she turned to face the wall, the window creaked slightly. Then a whisper came. Adiz. It's me. She sat up quickly. Ifini. He crouched at the window again, his hand pushing it open wider. I brought something. He passed a nylon bag through. Inside was a small flask of jollof rice and a sachet of water. You're too good, she whispered, her voice cracking. You don't deserve what they're doing to you. One day, Adiz, I swear, you'll be free. And you'll rise above all of them. His words settled deep inside her. They didn't erase the pain, but they added something new. Strength. Maybe quiet strength. Maybe not loud or fiery. But it was there, growing inside her, like a seed refusing to die. She touched the bag and whispered back. Thank you, Ifini. Thank you for seeing me. The next day came faster than it should have. Sleep, for Adiz, was no longer a place of rest. It was a place where her thoughts screamed in silence, where memories she tried to forget came back sharper. She dreamt of her mother again, her real mother, Olubube. She was wearing a white wrapper and standing at the edge of a river, calling her. But each time Adiz tried to reach her, the river widened, and the voice faded. She woke up with her pillow damp. There was no time to lie in bed. No room to cry. The day had already begun, and the familiar sound of Esin's sandals scraping across the cement floor meant trouble was already waiting. She rushed outside and began sweeping the compound before her name was called. Adiz, the voice thundered from inside. Have you ironed Nena's school uniform? Or you're waiting for me to come and iron it for you? I've done it, Ma, Adiz called out, sweeping faster. Then come and warm her breakfast now. Useless child. Adiz dropped the broom and entered the house. Nena sat on the couch like a queen, scrolling through her phone, her shoes already polished beside her. She didn't look up as Adiz passed. The kitchen was already hot, and the stew had a thick layer of oil floating on top. Adiz moved quickly, warming the rice and frying 2 eggs just the way Nena liked it, crispy edges, no onions. She arranged the plate, placed it carefully on the tray, and took it to the sitting room. Nena didn't say thank you. She never did. Esin walked in, still adjusting her wrapper, her eyes scanning everything. Good. That's how I want things done, she said. Now, Adiz, get ready. You're following me to the shop today. Adiz looked up in surprise. Esin hardly ever took her to the shop. Ma, did I say you should talk? Dress quickly. I don't want to repeat myself. Adiz nodded and rushed to her small corner, picking her brown dress, the one that didn't have holes. She tied her scarf and slipped on her slippers, one side already broken. They left together, Esin walking ahead, her purse swinging. People along the road greeted her. She smiled at some, ignored others. Adiz followed silently, 2 steps behind, her eyes low. When they reached the shop, a small container store lined with provisions, biscuits, soaps, and drinks, Esin brought out her keys and opened the door. Adiz swept the inside while Esin arranged the cash drawer and counted yesterday's sales. As they settled in, customers started coming. Mostly children buying sweets, women buying seasoning cubes, men asking for cigarettes. It was during one quiet moment that Ezin looked at Adiz with a strange expression. "You think I don't know what you and that boy are doing?" she said suddenly. Adiz blinked. "Ma, that useless Ifini boy. Always sneaking near our house like a thief. I saw him last night." Adiz's heart skipped. She said nothing. "You think you're smart, eh? Allowing a boy to feed you behind my back. So you can open your legs later, ABI?" Adiz felt her body go cold. "No, Ma. It's not like that." Before she could finish, Ezin slapped her again, harder this time. Right there in front of a woman who had just walked in to buy detergent. "Don't talk when I'm talking," Ezin shouted. The woman looked away, uncomfortable, picked her detergent, paid, and left quickly. "You want to disgrace me, Adiz?" Ezin hissed. "If I catch you talking to that boy again, I swear, I'll pour acid on your face. You'll see madness." The rest of the day went by in silence. Adiz stayed in the back corner of the shop, pretending to arrange cartons of noodles, but her hands shook. Her face stung. Her throat was dry. She hadn't eaten. Again. By the time they returned home, it was already evening. Nena was watching TV, legs stretched out, eating gala. She didn't ask how the shop was. She didn't even glance at Adiz. That night, Adiz couldn't sleep. She lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling, her hands tucked under her head. She thought about Ifini's face. The kindness in his eyes. The risk he took each night to bring her food. She didn't ask him to. He just did. Because he cared. But now Ezin knew. And when Ezin knew something, pain followed. She couldn't risk him getting hurt. He was the only person who had ever seen her pain and didn't turn away. So the next evening, when he came again, softly tapping at the window, Adiz didn't open it. He tapped again, whispering her name. "Adiz. It's me. Please. I brought something." She sat on her mat, facing the other way, her body trembling. "Adiz," his voice cracked. She bit her lip so hard it bled. Then the sound faded. His footsteps moved away slowly. The silence that followed felt like death. She curled into herself and wept. The next morning, Adiz woke up with swollen eyes. But something in her had changed. Not strength exactly. Not anger either. Just a stillness. Like she had reached the very bottom of herself. And all that was left now was decision. At the compound tap, while filling a bucket, a neighbor called out to her. "Adiz, are you not going to school today?" School. She had forgotten what it felt like. It had been 2 months since she last sat in a classroom. Ezin told everyone she had refused to learn, but the truth was she had to stay home to clean, cook, run errands, wash clothes, hers and Nena's. "I'll go tomorrow," she said softly. But even as she said it, she knew she wouldn't. Not unless something changed. That afternoon, while washing plates behind the house, she heard laughter inside. Male voices. Obinna was back. She dropped the sponge slowly. Her breathing changed. She walked to the window and peeped through the curtain. Obinna sat in the living room again, his legs crossed, sipping malt. Nena laughed at something he said. Ezin smiled, her face softer than usual. Then she heard it. "And I still say we should send Adiz to the village," Obinna said. "There's a man there asking for a young wife. A farmer. Not too old." Ezin laughed, throwing her head back. "Well, as long as she's not under my roof, I'm fine." Adiz stepped back from the window, her hand covering her mouth. She didn't know where the courage came from. But something in her snapped open. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was fire. But it woke something that had slept too long. That night, she didn't sleep. She waited until the house was dark and quiet. Nena snored lightly in her room. Ezin had locked her door as usual. Adiz took her nylon bag. The same one that once held old notebooks. She packed her mother's picture, her only gown, the money Ifini had once secretly slipped into her wrapper, just 2,000 naira, and the small bottle of perfume she found at the back of Ezin's cupboard that no one would notice was missing. She opened the back door and stepped into the night. Not to run, but to begin something else. Something that would shake everything. The air outside was damp. Not cold, just thick, like it was holding its breath for what was about to happen. Adiz stepped onto the narrow path behind the compound, the bag pressed tightly under her arm. Her slippers made soft flapping sounds against the ground, and every few steps she paused to listen, to make sure no one was following her. She didn't have a plan. She didn't even know where she was going. All she knew was that she could no longer stay. Her chest was tight. Her eyes, dry now. The tears had been used up in the years before this night. She walked. Past the old provision kiosk where men gathered to drink and gossip. Past Mama Chica's akara stand that always smelled like fried dreams. Past the locked school gate, its rusted chains clinking slightly in the breeze. Every step felt heavier than the last. She thought of Ifini. She thought of the look on his face when she didn't answer him that night. The pain in his voice. But she had to do it. To protect him. She reached the junction and stood there, undecided. The road split into three. Left went deeper into the town. Right led to the express. Straight ahead led toward the church grounds. Her legs turned toward the church. She had been there once, with her mother, when she was 6. She barely remembered the sermon, but she remembered the smell of incense, the old priest with his quiet voice, and how her mother held her hand the whole time. She walked through the small gate and crossed the yard, passing empty benches under the mango trees. The chapel doors were locked, but the side hall where they held youth meetings was open. She slipped inside. It was dark, but not frightening. The moonlight spilled through the small high window, painting soft light across the empty chairs. Adiz sat down. Her whole body slumped. She closed her eyes, holding her bag to her chest. For the first time in years, she didn't feel watched. Or shouted at. Or forgotten. Just still. Then a voice startled her. Adiz. Her heart stopped. She turned sharply. And there he was. Ifini. He stood at the door, breathing fast, his shirt clinging to his chest. He must have run. His eyes wide, like he wasn't sure she was real. How did you know I'd be here? She asked. I didn't, he said, walking in slowly. I just followed my heart. She swallowed hard. Her voice cracked. I had to leave. I couldn't wait anymore. He nodded, sitting beside her. I was scared something had happened to you. I almost stayed, she whispered. But then I heard them talking. Obinna. Ezin. They want to marry me off. Ifini's fists clenched. That man. He's disgusting. You're not staying with them anymore. I have nowhere to go, she said quietly. You do now, he said. Come with me. My sister just got a job in our bar. Her room is empty. I can talk to Mama. They'll understand. Adiz stared at him. You think they'll accept me? You're not a beggar. You're strong. You're kind. You're Adiz. They'll love you. Tears slipped from her eyes then. Not from pain, but from something warmer. Something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. They left the church together, walking side by side into the early hours of morning. Ifini's house was on the other side of town, near the market. It was a modest home, 2 rooms, a small kitchen, zinc roof, but it smelled like food, and safety, and the kind of life Adiz had never tasted. Mimar Ifima opened the door with sleep still in her eyes. Her face tensed when she saw Adiz. Ifini, she said sharply. What's going on? Please, Memar, he said quickly. She needs help. Memar Ifima's eyes moved slowly to Adiz, reading her. The dirt on her feet. The bag in her hand. The bruises on her arm. The thinness of her neck. She didn't ask questions. Not yet. She simply stepped aside. Come in, she said. We'll talk after food. That was the first time Adiz ate and cried at the same time. The rice was soft, slightly salty. The stew tasted like stories. And her tears fell quietly into her plate as she ate spoon after spoon. Later that morning, after she had bathed and changed into one of Ifini's sister's old skirts, Mama Ifima sat with her. "You're safe here," she said. "No one will touch you again. But I need to know, do you want to go back to school?" Adiz's voice was barely there. "Yes. More than anything." Mama Ifima smiled. "Then we start tomorrow." That night, Adiz lay on a real bed. The window was open. A fan hummed softly in the corner. Her bag sat beside her, untouched. She held her mother's photo to her chest. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she slept without fear. But peace is not always permanent. Because back at Ezin's house, the discovery had just begun. Ezin woke up and noticed the back door was open. At first, she thought maybe Adiz had gone to fetch water. But by afternoon, when she didn't return, her voice changed. "Where is that girl? Nena, when last did you see her?" "I don't know. She wasn't here this morning." Panic turned into suspicion. Then into rage. "She thinks she can disappear like that. She thinks I won't find her." Obinna came later that evening, holding his phone. "Did she run with anything?" "No," Ezin snapped. "Just vanished." Obinna's face darkened. "We have to find her. I don't like loose ends." Ezin's lips tightened. "She'll regret this." Because in her world, disobedience wasn't just punished. It was hunted. And Adiz was now on their list. But Adiz didn't know that yet. All she knew was the warmth of her first peaceful night. The first breath of freedom. The beginning of becoming someone she hadn't dared to imagine before. Morning crawled into the room gently, slipping through the curtains and brushing Adiz's face like a timid knock. She stirred, then opened her eyes slowly, unsure for a moment where she was. The ceiling looked unfamiliar, the mattress too soft, the air too quiet. Then it all came rushing back. She sat up, clutching the wrapper that covered her. The night hadn't been a dream. She had truly left. She had truly slept without fear. Her bag was still beside the bed, untouched. Her mother's picture still safely tucked beneath her pillow. She stood and walked to the small mirror hanging by the door. Her face looked different. Not healed, no. The pain hadn't disappeared, but there was something new in her eyes. A flicker. Like the matchstick spark before a flame. Voices echoed from the kitchen. She heard Ifini's laughter and the clatter of pots. The scent of beans drifted into the room, thick and familiar. She opened the door and stepped into the narrow hallway. Mema Ifima turned when she saw her. "You're awake," she said with a smile. "Come and eat, my dear. You need strength." Ifini looked up from the table and grinned. "Morning." Adiz sat down slowly, her body still sore in places, but her heart lighter than it had ever been. They ate together, like a family. No shouting. No harsh glares. No silence charged with hidden threats. After the meal, Mema Ifima wiped her hands on her wrapper and looked at Adiz seriously. "I spoke to Chinedu," she said. "He runs a school nearby. It's not fancy, but it's good. I told him about you." Adiz's eyes widened. "You told him?" "Only what he needed to know. He's willing to let you join the junior class until we see where you fit." Adiz blinked hard. You really want me to go to school?" "Yes. Unless you don't want to." "No. I want to. More than anything." "Good," Mema Ifima said, nodding. "We'll go tomorrow. Today, rest. Then help me around the house, small. And that was how Adiz began to rebuild. It was slow at first. Her first day at the school was awkward. She wore borrowed clothes. Her shoes were a size too big. The other students whispered, stared. But no one knew her story, not really. They just saw a quiet girl with serious eyes who didn't laugh easily. Chinedu, the school director, assigned her to Basic 9. Her classmates were noisy but harmless. Her seat was at the back, near the window. She didn't talk much. But she watched. She listened. She learned. Her notebooks filled quickly. Her handwriting returned to the neat, looping style her mother once praised. After school, she helped Mama Ifema in the kitchen. She swept. She fetched water. She helped fold clothes. Ifeni still smiled at her every time their eyes met, but he never pushed. He never asked questions. And every night, before bed, Adiz would hold her mother's picture, whisper to it, then sleep. Weeks passed like this. And then, one afternoon, everything changed again. Adiz was returning from school. She had taken the longer route because she liked walking past the tailor's shop, where loud music played, and the owner, a woman named Kelechi, always greeted her with a wink. But that day, as she turned the corner, her steps slowed. A car was parked at the junction. Obinna stood beside it. His sunglasses rested low on his nose. His arms folded. And his eyes locked on hers the moment she appeared. Adiz froze. Her heart slammed against her chest. Obinna smiled. It wasn't friendly. "There you are," he said. She turned and ran. Her bag flew off her shoulder. She didn't stop to pick it. Her feet pounded the sand, legs burning. She could hear footsteps behind her. He was following her. She cut through a side alley, climbed a short wall, slipped between two sheds. Her lungs ached, but she didn't stop. She burst into Ifeni's compound and slammed the gate shut behind her. Mama Ifema came out from the backyard, alarmed. "What is it? Who's chasing you?" Adiz couldn't speak. She collapsed to her knees, gasping for air, pointing back toward the street. It wasn't until Ifeni came back from errands and heard what happened that the full tension set in. "They found her," he said. "Ezin or Obinna or both. They've been looking." "We'll go to the chairman," Mama Ifema said. "This is not something we'll keep quiet about. You're not going back there, Adiz. I'll fight with everything I have." The chairman, a firm, grey-bearded man named Mr. Onuoha, listened to their report carefully. He called 2 youths from the vigilante group and sent them to the area where Obinna had been spotted. "He won't touch her again," he promised. But fear doesn't leave that easily. That night, Adiz didn't sleep. Every creak of wood, every whisper of wind made her flinch. She felt like prey. But something deeper than fear was beginning to grow too. Anger. Why should she run? Why should they chase her like a dog? Why should Obinna still walk freely, still laugh, while she lived in hiding? It wasn't fair. The next morning, she told Mama Ifema, "I want to report them. Ezin. Obinna. Everything." Mama Ifema looked at her for a long time, then nodded. And so, with Ifeni by her side, Adiz walked into the community welfare office. She told them everything. How her stepmother beat her. How she was starved. How she was almost married off without consent. How Obinna said he'd find her. She didn't cry while speaking. She didn't shake. Her voice was calm, flat, like she was reading from a script that had lived inside her for too long. The officers looked stunned. One of them, a woman with tight braids and tired eyes, wrote everything down. "We'll look into it," she said. But Adiz knew that tone. It meant, wait. It meant, maybe. It meant, don't hold your breath. So she didn't. She just returned home, sat on her bed, and wrote in her new notebook, the one Ifeni had bought her. On the front page, she wrote her name, Adiz Olubube. Not Ezin's Adiz. Not the girl in the shadows. But her mother's daughter. The rain had started in whispers. Soft and uncertain, it tapped on the zinc roof like someone trying to say something without raising their voice. Adiz sat by the window, watching the clouds gather in thick, angry folds. It had been 2 weeks since she gave her statement at the welfare office. 2 weeks of silence. No visits. No calls. No questions. She waited every day, hoping they would come for Ezin and Obinna. That they would be held accountable. But the world stayed quiet. Too quiet. Some days, Adiz caught herself listening for car horns. Listening for Obinna's voice around corners. It was like her mind had learned to be afraid even when her body sat still. That night, Mema Ifema came into the room, carrying a small envelope. "I have something for you," she said. Adiz looked up. "What is it?" "Open it." Inside was a receipt, slightly creased, and beneath it, a white form filled in blue ink. It had her name on it. School registration. And at the bottom, it said Form 4, promoted. "I spoke to Chinedu," Mema Ifema said. "He said your test scores were very high. He thinks you're ready to skip ahead." Adiz's mouth opened, but no words came out. "You're smart, Adiz," Mema Ifema added. "Don't let anybody shrink you again." "I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything. Just keep moving forward." That weekend, Adiz spent hours going through borrowed textbooks, her fingers flipping pages like they were pages from another life. She was beginning to find a rhythm again. A pattern. A future. But then, on Sunday evening, just as the sun had dipped low and Ifeni was walking her back from choir practice, something happened that shattered the quiet they had been clinging to. They were walking past the corner shop near the junction when a black car slowed beside them. The window rolled down. And Obinna leaned out. His smile was cruel and slow. "You think this is over?" Adiz froze. Ifeni stepped in front of her immediately. "Keep driving." Obinna chuckled. "The girl belongs to us. That house fed her. That woman raised her. She wants to forget that so easily." "You didn't raise her," Ifeni said through gritted teeth. "You broke her. Now get away before I call the police." Obinna raised a brow. "Police? They know me. They eat from my hand. You should ask around. You'll know who I am." He spat on the ground and the car sped off. Adiz's legs were shaking. Ifeni held her. "I won't let anything happen to you," he said, but his voice cracked. Because he was scared too. That night, Adiz couldn't sleep. She lay on the mattress staring at the ceiling, the sounds of the rain returning louder this time. She had run. She had hidden. She had reported them. But still, Obinna moved freely. Still, he taunted her. Still, her nights were filled with fear. She sat up, reached for her notebook, and began to write. Not school notes. Not homework. But something raw. Something deep. She wrote every detail of what had happened to her in Ezin's house. From the first slap to the night she ran. She wrote about Obinna. She wrote about the scars on her back, the ones that healed but left something beneath the skin. She wrote about her mother's voice, the way it used to wrap around her when she was scared. She wrote until her fingers ached and the page was soaked with tears she didn't realize were falling. Then she made a decision. She wasn't going to keep quiet anymore. The next morning, she asked Mema Ifema, "Do you know anyone in the press?" "The press?" "Yes. A journalist. Anyone who writes stories that people read. Someone who doesn't pretend when people are suffering." Mema Ifema blinked at her, then slowly said, "I know someone. Her name is Auntie Nkairu. She used to come here during elections. She writes for a paper in Enugu. Can you take me to her?" "Are you sure?" "Yes." It took 2 days, but Mema Ifema arranged a meeting. Auntie Nkairu was a tall woman with a sharp voice and a sharper stare. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't smile easily. But when Adiz began to talk, she put her pen down and listened. And listened. And listened. By the time Adiz was done, the room had fallen into the kind of silence that comes after truth drops like thunder. "Do you have any proof?" Nkairu finally asked. "I have this," Adiz said, handing over the notebook. The journalist read the first few pages. Her eyes didn't blink once. "I'll need to verify a few things," she said. "I understand. But Adiz, if I write this, you'll no longer be hidden. Everyone will know what they did to you. Are you ready for that?" Adiz took a breath. "I've been invisible long enough. Let them see me now." 3 days later, the story appeared in the local paper. The headline was bold. Girl escapes stepmother's abuse, speaks out against influential predator. Obinna's name was there. Ezin's name too. Their faces. Their connections. The pain they caused. People read. And people reacted. Calls poured into the welfare office. TV stations picked up the story. An NGO reached out. And finally, the police knocked on Ezin's door not to ask questions, but to arrest. Adiz watched from a distance. She didn't want to see their faces. She didn't want to hear their voices. She just stood by the church gate and waited for the confirmation. When the van drove past with Ezin in handcuffs and Obinna silent in the back, she turned and walked away. No smile. No tears. Just a quiet, deep breath. She had broken the silence. And the silence would never own her again. The street outside was unusually still that evening, like even the wind had paused to listen. Inside the small parlor of Mama Efima's house, Adiz sat quietly with her back straight and her fingers resting on her lap. She had just returned from the police station, where she was asked to give a follow-up statement. This time, they treated her differently. No vague nods. No tired sighs. One officer even stood when she entered. As if they finally understood that this girl, this once voiceless girl, was now something more than just a victim. She was a witness. A storm. But Adiz didn't feel powerful. She felt emptied out. Mama Efima brought her a glass of warm cocoa. The kind that tasted like childhood, even though hers had been ripped away too early. Drink, Mama Efima said softly. You haven't eaten. Adiz took it, but didn't sip yet. Did they say how long the case will take? She asked. Mama Efima shook her head. Court things take time. But for now, they're in custody. That's what matters. Adiz nodded. It doesn't feel like enough. I know. But it's a beginning. Later that night, Ifini knocked gently and stepped into her room. He held something in his hands. I made this for you, he said. It was a wooden pendant, smooth and oval, carved with a simple flower at the center. Around the edge, he'd written, Nwani Biike. A woman is strength. Adiz stared at it, then touched the curve of the pendant with her thumb. I didn't think anyone would ever make something for me, she whispered. You deserve more than just this, Ifini said. You've carried so much. She hung it around her neck without saying a word. But her eyes shone, and he knew what it meant. In the days that followed, Adiz noticed a shift. People now looked at her differently. On her way to school, women greeted her by name. The headmistress called her into her office not to scold, but to thank her. You've given other girls courage, she said. Girls from other classes began to linger by her desk after lessons. Some asked questions. Some said nothing, just looked at her with soft eyes, as though they saw something in her that reminded them of themselves. One girl, named Chinaza, waited until everyone had left before she spoke. My uncle, she began, then stopped. Adiz didn't ask. She just placed a hand on Chinaza's arm. You're not alone, she said. You're not going crazy. And it's not your fault. Chinaza began to cry. That afternoon, Adiz sat beneath the mango tree behind the school and thought of her mother. What would she say now? Would she be proud? Would she be sad that her daughter had seen so much? Maybe both. When she got home, there was a woman waiting in the compound. Tall, with a stern expression and a handbag that looked expensive. Mima Efima came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands. Adiz, she said, this is Mrs. Okoro. She runs an organization that helps girls who've experienced what you went through. Mrs. Okoro stepped forward. I read your story. You're brave. And I want to offer you something. Adiz blinked. Offer. A scholarship. To a boarding school in Awaka. Full sponsorship. Safe environment. Good teachers. Clean dorms. You'll finish your secondary school there. The silence that followed was heavy. Boarding school. A new place. New faces. Far from Ifini. Far from Mema Ifema. Far from the house that saved her. But also far from fear. Far from whispers. Far from the past. I don't know, she said. You don't have to decide now, Mrs. Okoro said. Think about it. That night, Adiz lay awake. She thought of the classroom, of Chinaza, of the growing crowd of quiet girls who leaned on her strength like a crutch. But she also thought of her own future. What if this was her chance to grow beyond this town? Beyond this pain? The next morning, she packed a small bag and walked alone to the church. She sat in the empty pew and whispered prayers she wasn't sure how to form. Then she heard a voice behind her. You know, when you speak to God, you don't always have to kneel. It was Chinedu, the school director. He sat beside her, giving her space. I heard about the offer, he said. I don't want to leave everyone. But they won't vanish because you're not here, he said. You've already lit the fire. Now let others carry it forward. What if I get there and I fail? You've already won. You're not running. You're rising. She didn't respond. But when she returned home, she told Mrs. Okoro yes. The next few days moved like a fast breeze. Her things were packed, mostly borrowed. Mema Ifema couldn't stop fussing, checking and rechecking her bag. Ifini barely spoke. When he finally hugged her, it was tight and fast, like if he held on too long he wouldn't be able to let go. At the park, as the bus waited, Adiz hugged them both. You saved me, she said to Mema Ifema. No, the woman replied. You saved yourself. I just gave you a roof. Then she turned to Ifini. I'll write, she said. You better, he replied, but he didn't smile. The bus door closed. The engine roared. Adiz looked out the window and waved until the faces blurred. She didn't cry. She just gripped the pendant around her neck and stared ahead. The road stretched long and winding. And for the first time in her life, it was hers. The bus groaned as it rolled past quiet towns and blurred trees, each mile peeling Adiz further away from the place that had shaped her through fire, through sorrow, and through defiance. She sat by the window, fingers curled around the smooth wooden pendant Ifini had carved. Nwani bi Ike. A woman is strength. The words stayed with her, humming quietly like a second heartbeat. It was evening when the bus pulled into the gates of the boarding school in Awaka. Tall fences, a wide compound, girls in clean uniforms walking in pairs. The school didn't look cold or cruel. It looked peaceful. That scared her more than anything else. A young woman met her by the admin block. Her name was Ngozi, a final year student and one of the house prefects. You must be Adiz, she said warmly, stretching out her hand. Adiz shook it, hesitating. Ngozi led her into a modest dormitory filled with bunk beds. This one's yours, she said, pointing to the top of a freshly made bunk near the window. Thanks, Adiz said softly, setting her small bag down. Don't worry, nobody here bites, Ngozi added with a smile. It's not like those scary stories about boarding school. We look out for each other here. Adiz nodded but didn't say much. That night, she lay awake while the other girls whispered and laughed in their bunks. She felt like she was floating in a place that wasn't hers yet. Her body was there, but her mind was still walking the streets of her old town, still hearing Obina's voice like smoke in her ear. But change has a way of working quietly. By the third day, Adiz had learned the names of her roommates, Uju with the loud laugh, Nena who always braided people's hair, and Amaka who prayed before every meal, even if it was just groundnuts and Gary. She started to settle into the school rhythm, morning devotion, classes, break time chatter, evening prep. Still, Adiz kept mostly to herself. She read during lunch. She volunteered to sweep the dorm even when it wasn't her turn. Not because she liked cleaning, but because it gave her something to control. But girls notice things. One evening, during prep, Nena leaned toward her and asked, "Did you really write that story in the newspaper?" Adiz froze. Her pencil paused in midair. Someone brought the article here, Nena added quickly. I read it. Everyone did. Some teachers even talked about it during staff meeting. But don't worry, we're not judging. We're proud. Adiz stared at her, unsure how to respond. You're kind of a legend, you know, Nena whispered. Adiz gave a small laugh, not from joy but from disbelief. Legend? She didn't feel legendary. She still flinched when shoes clicked too loudly behind her. Still reached for the pendant when silence got too heavy. Still saw her stepmother's face in nightmares. But as the weeks passed, something began to shift. During English class one day, the teacher asked for volunteers to read their essays aloud. No one moved. Then, unexpectedly, Adiz raised her hand. The teacher blinked. Yes, Adiz. She stood up slowly and read her piece, a story about a tree that grew sideways but kept growing anyway. When she finished, the room was silent. Then someone clapped. Then another. Soon the entire class clapped, not out of pity, but out of something else. Respect, maybe. And for the first time, Adiz smiled and didn't apologize for it. That night, she sat on her bunk and wrote a letter to Memar Efima. She didn't mention the fear, or the loneliness, or the nightmares that still crept into her sleep. She wrote about the girls, the meals, the laughter she was beginning to join in. She wrote about the story she read in class. She ended it with, I'm not home yet, but I think I'm walking toward it. Weeks turned to months. Her grades rose. Her voice grew louder. She joined the school's writing club, then became its secretary. By the next term, she was publishing short stories in the school magazine. Each story had a piece of her in it, hidden but strong, broken but fighting. And then one morning, during morning assembly, the principal called her name. Adiz, she said from the stage. Please come forward. Adiz walked up, heart racing. We've submitted your short story to the National Inter-School Writing Competition. Anne. She paused, smiling. You won. Gasps rippled through the student body. Adiz blinked. I did. Yes, the principal said. You've been invited to Abuja to read it at the Youth Literary Conference next month. All expenses paid. Applause thundered around her. Girls clapped, whistled, hugged her. Someone shouted, Adiz the writer, and this time, she didn't shrink. She stood tall. The evening before her trip to Abuja, she got a letter. The envelope had no stamp. It had been hand-delivered to the school. It was from Ifini. He wrote in small, neat handwriting. You said you'd write first. But you didn't. I forgive you. We all read about the competition. I saw your picture in the paper. I cut it out and pasted it beside your old drawing on my wall. Mama Efima said you're becoming the kind of woman your mother would have danced to see. I don't know if you'll come back here someday. But I'll wait. Not because I need you to, but because that's what brothers do. I'm proud of you, Adiz. She folded the letter slowly, pressing it to her chest. She would never forget the pain. Never erase what happened. But she had rewritten the ending. Not with revenge. Not with rage. But with her words. Her voice. Her fight. And as the bus to Abuja drove into the horizon, Adiz leaned against the window, a soft smile on her lips, and whispered to herself. I am not what they did to me. I am what I chose to become. Moral of the story. No matter how deep the pain or how cruel the betrayal, healing and strength are possible. You are not defined by what others did to you, but by how you rise, reclaim your voice, and build your future. Silence can break chains, but speaking truth, standing tall, can light the path for others. Every scar can become a story of survival, and every survivor holds the power to rewrite the ending. Hello, family. We'd love to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are right now? Drop your answers in the comment.